Hello and welcome to the DFW Divorce Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Eitzen, and today we are going to be discussing how to maintain intimacy in your personal relationships under quarantine. And to help us do that, we have psychotherapist and executive coach, Jim Dolan. Jim, how are you doing today?
Good morning, Matthew, and thanks to Duffee Eitzen for having me on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We're so glad to have you. It's always nice, we love all our lawyers and we love their legal expertise, but it is always nice to get someone with a different perspective who comes from a different background, especially given our topic for today, which you I think are far more qualified to talk about than probably anyone at our office. And so, as I mentioned, our topic for the day is how to maintain intimacy in our personal relationships during quarantine. And seems like the obvious place to begin with that is, what exactly do you mean when you say intimacy?
Well, and typically when in my work with people, when they use the word intimacy, they almost always seem to be referring to their physical or sexual relationship. But I think that intimacy is a much bigger, wider, deeper, more comprehensive state of being than just what goes on in the physical sphere. Intimacy is that experience of being completely revealed to your partner, to whoever you're with, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It's something that takes place over time. Early on in a relationship, there's this tremendous rush of biochemicals and the discovery of the new partner that kind of takes over people's hearts and minds, and they feel that they have developed a state of intimacy that they've never experienced before. Quite often it's called falling in love, right? But what I talk about when we talk about intimacy is something that grows over time and it changes. I think another thing that we need to understand about intimacy is that while we seek it, we also run from it as well, because to be completely revealed to the other is a fundamentally unsettling experience. It's a loss of control. It's a loss of ego boundaries. And while we desire it, we also run from it.
You obviously thus far have discussed it in the context of romantic relationships, but this concept of intimacy also applies to non-romantic relationships, yes?
Oh, absolutely it does, yeah. For instance, the intimacy you experience with a friend is not necessarily going to be the same as what you would experience it with what we might call an intimate partner. That might be the best term, a life partner. You tell me. But
yeah.
The intimacy that you experience with a friend is going to be is going to be different. There's not as much of a threat aspect. And because we don't completely and totally reveal ourselves to our friends. Mm-hmm. However, in a long-term life partner relationship, eventually the odds are very great that you are indeed going to be completely revealing yourself as yourself unfolds over time.
Mm-hmm.
So roommates, people who reside together, who share the same space but do not have that added feature of sexual or romantic love, then there is intimacy in the sense that you have to be you eventually, whenever you cohabit with someone, there's always problems, whether it's in that intimate relationship or whether it's in a roommate relationship. There's always problems because human beings, being the flawed creatures that we are, we always, get crossed up with people who are in the same domestic space, and we have to know how to manage those challenges. And to do so, it does involve intimacy. And instead of, if your roommate always puts your your special foods in the wrong place in the refrigerator, and over time it gets to be very, really irritating. What do you think would be the best way to solve that problem? To say, hey, I wish wouldn't put my food in the wrong place in the refrigerator, man. I'm getting sick of that. Or would it be better to say, I appreciate that we're both sharing this same refrigerator, and somehow my stuff winds up in a place that I can't get to it. And I wonder if you and I could talk about that and figure out a better way to store our special foods. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Which do you think would have the better outcome?
If I, in my unprofessional guess, I would probably guess it's the second one, but I'm not the expert.
Also, it involves a degree of self-revelation, of revealing to your, that you have a difficulty, and and revealing that you do have some emotions involved in this relatively minor matter of, food storage.
Right. And of course, it's little things, but a bunch of little things can build up, or the same little thing over an extended period of time can become, in one's mind, quite a big thing.
Yeah.
So what, and so to sort of springboard off of that, do you think that most issues of intimacy or sort of conflict related to intimacy come from things like that sort of, maybe not disregard, but perhaps, to be more generous, overlooking of the other person's boundaries or considerations? Do you think that's the source of most conflict in that area?
Yeah, when you think about it, you realize that conflicts arise out of painful feelings of vulnerability, of having boundaries broken, boundaries penetrated, and we want to push back. We want to reestablish our boundary and make sure that the other person understands that they have penetrated a boundary without being invited. And so, the conflicts come out of that kind of thing. It's knowing how to address the feelings, however petty, however trivial they might be. Knowing how to address those feelings in a constructive manner is part of the trick of sustaining a quality of intimacy. So, intimacy always involves both togetherness and separateness. If you have gotten too close to me, if you've messed around with my stuff, whatever my stuff might be, I'm going to push back. It's instinct to push back. And
right.
And knowing how to push back in a way that is constructive rather than destructive is the trick. To me, the trick is to own the vulnerability. To say, look, it bothers me when you put my olive oil mayonnaise, where I can't get at it when I want a sandwich, or something like that.
Right. Whatever your particular problem might be.
Yeah.
So let's delve further into that. You say acknowledging the vulnerability is the key to resolving these problems, and so by that you mean saying I am hurt when X happens.
Yes.
Or some variation of that.
Yes. And also being able to hear that from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Not only being able to articulate it, but also to accept it when it comes from the other direction.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think often causes people to be unable to hear that or say that? Because I've noticed in my own experience that both for myself sometimes and I've seen it in other people that it can be quite hard to say I'm feeling bad or sad or mad about X to that can be quite a difficult thing to say, and I think you're right that it can be a difficult thing for people to hear sometimes. Why do you think that is? What causes us to not want to engage with that sometimes?
Well, the ego always wants to maintain its rigid boundaries, and to make those statements of vulnerability means that you're opening a gate in your own ego, and advising the other, inviting the other person to look in.
Mm-hmm.
And, the same thing happens the other way as well, when the other person is saying, well, this is what hurt me, or, insulted me, aggravated me, whatever. I'm looking into theirs as well. So it's that tremendous opening of oneself to the other, and the other to me is really what I think of when we think about intimacy. Is because intimacy is also imperfect. It's a state of imperfection. It's revealing the imperfectness of oneself to another person.
Mm-hmm. So I think then there are sort of two questions that further suggest themselves to me. One is, what can we people do to, if they are in quarantine with someone, what can they do to maintain the intimacy to avoid conflicts like this? And then the second question that's just up to me is, if there are already conflicts like this, advice on how one could resolve, or sort of advice on mindset and attitude and approach and that sort of thing, on how one can begin to talk through some of these problems with their partner, roommate, etc.
Well, I think that in the big picture, what is counterintuitive is to ensure that there is plenty of space, that there's plenty of apartness, that you allow one another to depart, to go out for a walk, to go away, to be in their own room, their own part of the house, their own part of the domicile, whatever it is, and to allow for that separateness. I would say that because intimacy is as much a matter of togetherness and as it is a matter of separateness, you can't have one without the other. People will quite often want to ask, how can I get along better? And before I would say, well, what are the methods of getting along better? I would say, make sure you're getting enough alone time, enough apart time, enough separateness. And that has a way of kind of freshening and renewing our contacts with the other person when you've been able to pull away and be into your own space. As far as managing, if you're sharing a residence or a domicile or a hut or whatever with another person, the conflicts are already there. Conflicts are as much a part of any intimate relationship as the good stuff, so and quite often the conflicts in a relationship are as much a part of the glue that keeps the relationship together as the good stuff, the feel good stuff. So how to manage and those contacts, those conflicts always involves the practice of mutual respect and vulnerability, understanding that for the other person, quarantine and shelter in place is just as difficult for that other person or persons as it is for you. So realize that we're always walking around and right now we're walking around in a space that contains a certain degree of suffering, a certain degree of anxiety, a certain degree of fear. And we have to understand that and respect that, not only for ourselves, but also for the people that we're with.
The idea that it's important to not spend every waking minute together, because I know personally some people who do not like to be alone, who whenever possible they want to be talking to someone, hanging out with someone, and in normal life that would be many different people, ideally, healthfully, but some people, when you go into quarantine with just one other person, if you have anxiety about being alone, I think that hearing that what you need to do to maintain a healthy relationship with that person is to be alone more might strike people as odd.
we got to remember that what is right for one person is not necessarily right for another. So it's worth remembering that, for instance, music is made up of both sound and silence.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same way that intimacy is composed of both closeness and separateness. You can't have music without the silences. You can't have intimacy without the separations or the contacts. To me, in human relationships, the time together are the notes, and the times apart are the silences. So if you're a person who has a troubled relationship or a troubled intimate relationship with yourself, that is something to look at, because I think that a person who does have a troubled intimate relationship with themselves, they're people who are suffering inside and suffering in a way that they don't articulate or share with others, and probably need help of some kind to understand what it is that they avoid when they avoid being with themselves. I don't know if that speaks at all to what you're asking about, but
no, I think it did. No, I think that hit it exactly. I'm not sure I have any more questions about this topic specifically. Is there anything else you wanted to say to wrap up? Last thoughts? Anything we didn't get to?
Well, in general, I would say during this period of quarantine, there's a certain combination of basic elements that go into the recipe of how to deal with this fundamentally unsettling time. And to me, that has to do with exercise, plenty of it, as much as you can possibly stand, meditation, time to be alone, to be quiet, to listen to your breath, and to, as much as possible, try to step away from the fear, the anxiety, the uncertainty, to eat well, but not too much, to get plenty of rest, and to focus on the here and now.
Well, there we go. I think that's excellent advice. And the last thing we've been asking all of our guests, just for a little bit of levity right here at the end, what have you been doing beyond all the things you just articulated to keep your spirits up? Have you been? I know you're a music fan. Have you been listening to any music recently or anything like that?
Well, we just moved house. I'm sitting in the empty, unfurnished bedroom of the new house that we just moved into, and I'm having to deal with the literally thousands of LPs that I just moved over from the old house to the new house. And as I sit and look at the boxes upon boxes upon boxes of LPs, CDs, and yes, cassettes, I hear this loud voice in my head saying, "You fool."
Oh, but then you're going to get to unpack them all, and you're going to get to go through them all and go, oh, I haven't listened to this in a million years. I love this record. Oh, I haven't listened to this in a million years.
Or I didn't even know I had this record.
Exactly.
Or I didn't know I had 3 copies of this record.
Right. When did I get this third one? Oh, I don't know. Well, that's it for us here at the DFW Divorce Insider Podcast. Jim, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Matthew.
And if you enjoyed Jim, you can find him at jimdolantherapy.com. That's all one word, JimDolanTherapy.com. You can also give him a call at 214-629-6315. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to our podcast so you'll get every new episode right when it comes out. If you're looking for family law representation in the DFW area, or if you just want to learn more about today's topic, please look us up at www.duffeeandeitzen.com or at dallastxlegal.com, or just type Duffee and Eitzen into Google. It's DuffeeandEitzen. You could also send us an email at info at d-elaw.com or give us a call at 214-416-9010. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, I've been Matthew Eitzen. This has been the DFW Divorce Insider Podcast. Y'all take care now.